I'm back. Hey guys, welcome back to the Save the Best for Last podcast. Season 3, episode 4. Every month I just feel like I'm getting old as shit. Because what do you mean I've made 12, well, I guess I do 10 a year, 10, 20. This is my 24th episode. Like, wow. And sometimes it's hard. Like, I really want to touch on that. I think I've talked about this in the past, but it can be hard for me to find the motivation to do this, which, in my opinion, defeats the purpose. Like, the whole point of this is to be transparent and for it to be fluid and honest and not forced. So there's days where I set time to record and I'm like, no, I'm just not in the headspace. And then there's months like this month where it's like, well, you do it now or you don't publish an episode. And then it's like the fear and the stress of not posting. And like I hold these standards on myself with everything I do in life and pressurize everything to an extent where it's not healthy. And I recognize that. And a lot of people in my life recognize that I hyperfixate on everything. I might overthink everything, to the very small details in my life to the very big details in my life. And it honestly hinders me more than it helps. And to some it might be a great trait because I do everything to the fullest extent and I think about everything to the fullest extent. But it can also keep me up at night. So tread cautiously when it comes to that. Without further ado, I want to get into today's episode, and I thank each and every one of you who takes the time to listen to me banter with myself about things that are themes within my life. In the past, I've sat down with other people and talked about things that may affect both of us. And I went back and forth about what I wanted to talk about today, but I just got a sign on why I needed to talk about what I need to talk about today, which is becoming someone new without losing yourself. And this is a difficult one. And I found this to be difficult in my life for its entirety. And I think it's because I think it's multiple things. I want to start by dissecting you're a product of your environment, right? And I think anytime you're put into a new environment, you're going to morph to an extent of what's going on. And it's like a sink or swim situation. Like you can think about this personally, you can think about this professionally, you can think about this in every aspect of your life. It's like you either mold and mesh and change into the standard or the culture or whatever that looks like, or you don't and it doesn't work. And it's unfortunate because in a lot of aspects of life you have to be able to distinguish that and make sure you're really walking the fine line of becoming someone new without losing who you are, which is the whole point of today's episode. And unfortunately, I've had to learn this the hard way in the past by now having the ability to reflect on who I once was and realizing, thank God I'm not that person anymore. But on the other caveat, I've looked at it through the lens of I am who I am now and far from perfect, but overall life is pretty damn good. And I'm grateful that I've changed from who I once was. So I first want to touch on the uncomfortable middle of transformation. Because you're not in that phase, you're not who you used to be, but you're not fully who you're becoming either. And that's hard. And I think me currently, that's where I'm at. Which is why I want to speak to this. I'm sure as shit not the girl that was sitting here speaking to you all a year ago. But I'm also not where I want to be. And I think that's why I'm so uncomfortable and I'm so anxious lately. just to go over the past 2 days, is I've been traveling I've been traveling this whole entire year. But the past month has been intense, and I've been in like 6 different time zones, and things have just gotten really crazy really quick. And it's sad. The most recent trip I was on, I was like anxious to the point where I was sick. And I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with, mental health affecting their physical health or ulcers or anything of that nature, but unfortunately, change can be uncomfortable. And as much as I love change and I embrace change, and not everyone can say the same about that, I also can acknowledge that change has been very uncomfortable for me in the past. And it's that middle ground, like I said, the uncomfortable middle of a transformation. For everyone, the beginning and the end of the transformation is cakewalk. But that middle ground of the actual transforming in and of itself is what's difficult. It's not saying I want to transform, and it's not you becoming the new being. It's what's in between. And I think it's okay to feel that way. I truly feel that right now I'm very much so misunderstood, or in a quote unquote hard place. But I can step back and see overall you're doing okay. But how I feel in this interim and in this middle of changing is very uncomfortable. And it's very isolating. And I don't feel like anyone understands me. I don't feel like I can go to anyone about any of this stuff, because it's so unique and specific to my current circumstances, which I don't know anyone else that walks that walk. And I think another aspect of, this whole point that I'm trying to make of the uncomfortable middle is the aspect of outgrowing old habits, people, or even versions of yourself, right? And that's hard. I had an episode a couple months ago called Let the Bridge Burn. And that's probably my favorite episode. It's kind of a weird episode. It's probably not most people's favorite episode, but it's my favorite episode because it truly represents who I am as a person. I don't believe in the whole concept of you shouldn't burn bridges. I think to an extent that's true, but I think a lot of bridges are meant to be burnt. And when we talk about this whole conversation of becoming who you want to be and doing that without losing yourself, I think that's important to bring up. Not all people are supposed to be in your life, maybe for this certain chapter or maybe indefinitely, and that's okay. And I also think it's important, regardless of the person and their relationship to you in your life, you're not supposed to be everyone's friend regardless of the dynamic, and that's okay. And you shouldn't give up who you are morally or your belief systems in order to fit in a certain crowd. And I think that's very important to remember, because I'm so often recently tested in multiple aspects of my life on fitting in certain dynamics. I have a friend group that I don't really necessarily fit the mold. Most of my friends are moms. They're, have a very overall relaxed life. I mean, obviously being a mom isn't relaxing, but what I mean by that is overall their days are very similar. They're raising children. They stay at home. They're very family driven, and my life is very different than that. So sometimes I don't really feel like I fit in with that, even though they're my best friends and they haven't done anything wrong. It's just like I'm over here in fucking no man's land doing things people don't really understand. And a lot of people can't really understand or grasp the life that I live. So it's very isolating. And even like from a professional standpoint, I don't necessarily mesh or am the same as people I work well around. And even though I have a great work relationship with them, I'm still able to understand like we are not the same, right? And that can be difficult. Or I feel like it can make you feel very misunderstood or out of place. And I want everyone to know, including myself, and I can say this to myself so I'm blue in the fucking face, but you have to live it to see it, right? Like, I won't really see through the lens of how I'm talking right now till I get through this era of my life. And I hope everyone that's listening remembers that. Like, when you're in this phase of uncomfortability and you're becoming someone new without losing yourself, like I keep saying, you're inevitably going to be in a place of being uncomfortable. And until you're out of it, you're not going to understand why. And that's where I'm at. Another aspect of this is, for me, is, oh God, this hits home. Like, I'm reading my notes right now, and this is so Mac coded. If anyone knows me knows I use the word coded like it's tattooed on my forehead. Is there's this pressure within my life to consistently level up. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, what career I'm holding, where I'm traveling to, what marathon I'm running. Like, it's not enough. And it's like this looming cloudy sky over my head of constant stress and anxiety of you're not doing enough. Like, I recently ran a marathon, and then about 2 weeks later I ran a 10K. And after the 10K, I pulled my hamstring, and it was pretty bad. Like, I could still walk, but I couldn't even stretch without being in like a sharp shooting pain, and it's still healing. And one thing about me, anyone that knows me, I stay consistent in a weight range, but that range fluctuates plus minus 10 pounds, 10 to 20, depending on what I'm doing. And it really fucks with my head. Like, I can notice when I gain half a fucking pound, and it eats me alive. And it's extremely difficult. The pressure of consistently wanting to level up is extremely difficult. And anyone that faces that is going to know that the argument here is going to be discipline versus the motivation. And I don't know. This is a very hard aspect of growing into the person that you want to be, because it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like, it's incredible to constantly level up, but when do you get to a point where you're just content with where you're at, you know? And that's hard for me. That's very hard for me. So I try to find gratitude with where I'm at. I try to understand and accept where I'm at and where I'm wanting to go. But it's difficult. It's difficult to find that balance. Oh God, I'm just reading these notes and I'm just like, oh my gosh, please don't cry on this episode. Fun fact about me, anyone that's been around long enough knows that everything I do is so deep. And that's the hard part with growing. Because when they say, oh, there's growing pains, and right now, excuse me, I keep yawning. Right now, we're talking about those uncomfortable growing pains. Well, when you feel things so deeply, those growing pains magnify. And they're like the norm times a million. And I naturally feel things deeply, but most of the time, I try to actually hide it. Because if people in reality saw how emotional I was about just day-to-day life, they'd think I'm absolutely fucking nuts. Because I am. Like, everything I do, it doesn't matter what it is. Going to get the mail. Like, there's very thought and intent and a lot of depth to every single move that I make and everything I do in life. And I don't want people to see that. I want to be looked at as like the strong one. I want people to, you know, not be judgmental of that aspect of me. It's funny, I was recently at a function, we'll call it, and I was speaking openly about how emotional I am. And there was a woman there that I had just recently met, and she was lovely. But as soon as I started talking about this, she was like, you can't be like that. Like, you can't be like that. And it was really upsetting. It was. And I obviously didn't showcase that. But that is why I feel like I can't feel through the changes that I'm going through in life. And, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, culturally showing emotions is looked down upon and looked as weak. When in all reality, it's like an absolute blessing and an absolute honor to be able to feel to that level. Because there's the opposite end of the spectrum where people can't feel at all. So, yeah, it's just finding the comfort of the discomfort can be challenging. The last point I had on this, and I'm like, oh, I haven't even been talking for 20 minutes yet. This is too short of an episode, so I'll go on to share a story time. But redefining what security means. And when I say security, I don't mean financial security. Well, I do, but that's not the entirety of it. I also mean emotional and physical stability. Here's the thing. When you're going through a transition period and you're changing, but you're not wanting to lose yourself, but you're wanting to change, it's like a teeter-totter. And it's like you can really tip that shit and then you're gone, right? And that's what happens. Is a lot of times when people go through the transition of changing is, you know, we're constantly changing, but sometimes people get lost and people don't come back. And I've seen it all too well. The first person I think of, and this is sad, and I don't mean this in any, you know, negative way, but Amanda Bynes is a great example of the teeter-totter. Just, she was flung. And it's sad. It's not fair. It's devastating what happened to that woman. And that's why with this you have to, you know, tread cautiously. And that's why I think security is an important aspect to bring up. Is you have to really be careful with a lot of aspects of security within your life. And I think this is what's going to be time consuming of this episode, because this is probably to a listener right now that's listening to me go on and on. You're probably thinking, what do you mean, like, security? Like, we were just talking about change and now all of a sudden you're talking about needing a security guard. Well, no, that's the misconception, is that I don't mean like protection in that aspect. I mean what actually makes you feel safe. Because when so much is changing, you need something to hold on to. You need some sort of safety blanket. You need some sort of seatbelt. You need some sort of harness. You need something, or you're going to go flying off the teeter-totter. I just thought of another great analogy. Like, that's what my podcast should really be about, finding the best analogies in the goddamn world. No, but in all seriousness, that's what I mean. And right now, I look at this note and I'm reading, what actually makes you feel safe? And I don't know if I have an answer to that. Sleeping? Like, the only time I don't have anxiety is when I'm asleep. And that's a problem. Like when I'm working out, anxiety. When I'm at work, anxiety. When I'm walking home, anxiety. When I'm driving home, anxiety. And that's a problem. And to anyone that's going through any sort of change and it feels so like deathly and it feels unbearable, well, it's because there's got to be a constant in the equation. Everything can't be changing. Another question I wrote down is, are you building a life or just reacting to one? God, and I hate to say that out loud because I'm reacting to one. I can't really say I've built anything. There's some things I've built, like this podcast I'd say I've built. But a lot of things we do in life, we're just reacting. And like everything that comes to us, we just react and move forward. There's no actually rhyme or reason or thought process. And although I feel very deeply and I think very deeply, I do also, because there's so many things coming my way, it's a lot of reactiveness rather than building. And I think when we talk about from a security standpoint, that's what puts you in an unsecure state. Rather than building something or creating something for your life that, can only be built or destroyed by you, you're putting a lot of things in the hands of others. And that's the problem, is the control component. And that was another thought I had for today, is like, I could just talk strictly and primarily about control, but I don't want to sound like a control freak. But I had to take a breath there. You do need to be in control. And you need to build for you and not for the sake of other people. And I think so often I find myself thinking, well, what is this person going to think? Or what is this person going to think? Well, when you're dead, is that really going to fucking matter? What did you think? How did you feel? How did you get through that episode and that time period of your life where you were going through major change? And that's the problem, is that's not really being thought about. It's just reacting. So anyway, I digress on the security component of things. This can be hard. I just want to reiterate that when you're changing things and you're outgrowing things, it can get really tricky. And lately, like I said, things have been really tricky because I don't really feel like I have a home. And I don't mean physically. I want to be clear, everybody. I have a physical home. I'm very, very blessed. I live a very blessed lifestyle. But emotionally and mentally, I don't really have a home. And that's a problem. But I do also want to reiterate and circle back to, it's okay to feel like this, and there's a reason for every season. And I'm going to look back on this and have so much gratitude for where it's going to bring me to. And unfortunately, I've very clearly outgrown parts of my life, parts of my mindset, and a lot of who I used to be. And I'm not fully settled into who I'm becoming yet. And I think it's so hard, and why I make episodes like this is because this isn't really spoken about. It's just like, oh, change is a great thing. Like, you'll come on the other side of it. But what about the year, the 2 years, the 5 years, the 10 years, the 15 years of you going through that change? What the fuck about that? What about people that, were married for 25 years and just lost their partner? What about people that just relocated their whole life to another part of the world, country, city, state, whatever that looks like for you, and you're all alone and have no support? What about people that just got a diagnosis that they, have to change their entire way of life in order to continue living. We're not thinking about that. We're just, as a society, thinking, all right, change is a great thing and you're going to come out the other side of it great. But I can't function living in the land of make-believe like shit is not going on and it is. And I also can't function not speaking my truth. And the truth is, right now, shit is very difficult for me. Fact, it is. Because I'm in an uncomfortable situation because I'm changing. And I just want people to know that uncomfortability is normal, and give yourself grace. And don't allow people to make you feel like you can't feel. I think as a lot of time when I talk these things through, my thoughts get sporadic. But then when I really recap what I just spoke about and I think about it, it's okay to feel. And that's the problem. Like I just brought up the woman that said I should be embarrassed for crying at an event or at work or I disagree. Because it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a blessing to be able to feel in this life. And my biggest advice to anyone out of any episode, and I say so many words of advice, but don't let anyone try to label your feelings or change your feelings or tell you your feelings are incorrect or invalid. And I know we've all heard this before, but it's actually a problem. And on that note, also, don't let someone define who the fuck you are. Because lately I've ran into a lot of that. And that's a problem. Because it fucks with your head and it fucks with your self-worth. And then it has you questioning. And now you're in this moment of change. And on top of the change, someone's telling you that, the change that you're currently in, you're not the person you once were. Or whatever that looks like for you. And then it's this mind game, right? It's this mind game. And people have no idea the deep, dark effect that this has on someone and who they are and who they're becoming, because people don't care about anyone except themselves. And I hate to say that. And that's not 100% true. But the majority of the world thinks through the lens of themselves. I mean, this podcast, I speak through the lens of myself. Someone one time recently, forget the context of this, but I'll never forget someone saying this to me. And it's so true. But when you wake up every day, you get ready, you brush your teeth, and you take a shower, and you do X, Y, and Z. You're doing that for you. Like, as a human being, by nature, you look out for you. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But the problem is, as a human being, by nature, that's how you are. So people say things and do things with that motive. So when someone's trying to tell you who you are, they're saying that based on who they are. I'm going to rephrase that. Not even rephrase that, restate that. When someone's telling you who you are, they're saying that based on who they are. I don't know if you've ever heard the slogan, the phrase, whatever you want to call it. You aren't who you think you are who you think someone else thinks you are. And I'll never forget that, because that's true. You can argue that till you're half dead, but that's the truth. You see yourself through what you think other people think you are. And that's the whole fucking problem here. And that's what's so difficult about change and being in this place and trying to figure out how to change but not lose yourself, and is that there's so much influence of those that aren't even you. True, false, true. Like, that's what's so hard, is like, as much as everyone can say that, they're confident, I'm one of the most confident cats on the street. I truly feel that way. And as much as people say, oh, I don't care about what anyone thinks, that isn't 100%. That's just not true. You may be really good at not caring what other people think. You may be a very confident person. But at the end of the day, we all have doubts and we all think about what other people think. As people around me currently say, the optics. Everyone looks at the optics. That's why people move the way they move. If people didn't think of the optics, no one would own a designer bag. No one would drive a nice car. There would be no humanity. Because there would be no desires and no desirability and no... Everything is an optic. Everything is a perception of someone. So for anyone to say, I don't care what people think, or, oh, I'm confident, no one has any effect on me. Like, okay, well, that's fine. You can say that, but that's statistically, scientifically, that's not true. Right? So I find creating these episodes are very helpful. And maybe for you, if you're also currently changing and not trying to lose yourself, you don't necessarily need to start a podcast. You could. I'd watch it. Drop the link below. Or you can just journal. Or you can verbally journal, like what I'm doing right now. And sometimes when you think about it like that and you say it like that, it's helpful. Because having the validation of others is helpful. It's a security blanket. And with everything I have going on, I recently was given validation by someone and I needed to hear it because I never hear it. And yeah, I'm confident, so I can use my confidence to get through, to get by, but I'm not getting by in a well state. And I recognize that, and I recognize that there's a lot of change going on right now. And there's a breakthrough that's on the cusp. And there's a deeper shift happening. And it's, raised a lot of questions of who I am and what do I stand for, what do I tolerate, and what do I not. And it gets to a point where you got to make a call. And you got to make a decision, and you have to be able to continue to stride and break through and become who you're meant to be. Because you're not going to stay in this middle grounds forever. But it can be, the realization of this can be a little destabilizing. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. I'm just going to say it like that. And if you're in it, you know what I mean. But I digress. I just want to reiterate that being uncomfortable means you're going through it. You're going through the change, and that's a beautiful thing. And you're going to look back at this, and you're going to look back at the one who kept going without all the answers, and the one who chose growth over comfort, and who stayed in the process instead of running from it. And when that day comes, that version of you is going to be the version of you that changed everything. But it's hard. And I want to reiterate, as much as my thoughts were kind of all over the place today, the message I want to get across is you're not behind, you're not stuck. You're in the middle of becoming. And this might not be the part where everything clicks. then maybe this is the part where you just build the foundation, where you get honest, where you choose differently, where you start aligning your life with the person you know you're meant to be, even if you don't fully even like her or him yet. Because one day you inevitably will. And always remember that you're working towards the version of you that changed everything. So, if you're out there and you're in that phase of transformation, know that it's all part of the process, and to not give up and be consistent. Give yourself love, give yourself grace, find the security, find the stability, and remember that this too shall pass. But you're becoming someone new, and that's a beautiful thing. But just don't lose yourself in the process. The teeter-totter inevitably will balance itself out. You just can't give it too much of who you're meant to be. Anyway, my friends, it's always an honor and a privilege to sit down and share these thoughts and be deep and feel. And I appreciate this platform for always giving me a space to feel. Because I may not be given that every day. So, thank you. Anyway, I told myself I wouldn't cry, so I'm done now. But I appreciate each and every one of you. And Godspeed. And my DMs and all my forms of communication are always open. But it's okay to be in the middle. It's okay to be in the process. But I hope you guys have a wonderful May. Summer is almost upon us. I hope all the girls and the guys are ready. I sure as hell am. So I look forward to seeing you all in June. Oh my God. That's scary. Anyway, I'm going to go to sleep now. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you all have a beautiful May. Bye now.